This is the Welcome to Humanity podcast with thought leader and transformative psychiatrist, Dr. Fred Moss. This show focuses on the betterment of humanity on a global scale. Each episode will leave you enlightened, inspired, and ready to make an impact in your world. Welcome to the show. Welcome to your life. Welcome to humanity. Here's Dr. Fred.
What a beautiful day in the neighborhood it is today. Without going any further, I just want to say I am so proud and eager and honored to be with the guest I have with us today. I have a bio somewhere that says a lot about who this guy is. And frankly, I don't have it by my side, to be honest. But you know what? I am not even worried for a second. Because who we have today is one Kurt Krueger. And Kurt and I have been in circles, sort of in a Venn diagram. We've been in circles where we could have and should have and might have met long ago, and perhaps we even did. But in reality, this run of being with each other runs back no longer than about 6 months, in my word. And again, we could make a case cosmically for it going back at least 6 lifetimes, but that's a topic for a different discussion. So what we have here, right, Kurt? You hear what I'm saying there, right?
Oh, I totally hear you, and I resonate with you totally, obviously.
So what we got here is Kurt Krueger, and Kurt's just a man among men, a human among humans, and he probably doesn't always see himself that way. And we're going to learn a little bit about who he is and what he's up to today.
I'm a human among humans.
That's right.
Yeah, because this man among men and all that stuff,
all right,
it doesn't resonate with me because I'm all about humanity, and that's what we are.
Hey everyone, it's Dr. Fred. So before we dive into today's conversation with my good friend Kurt Krueger, I want to just take a minute to let you know that I just finished putting together the audiobook version of my soon-to-be-released book called The Creative 8. This book teaches a surprisingly simple method for healing that utilizes both creativity and self-expression as its primary modalities. As a listener to the Welcome to Humanity podcast, I just want to give you a completely free version of this book, the audiobook, as a big thank you for listening to the show. All you need to do is go to welcometohumanity.net/creative and download it. I've used this Creative 8 methodology with both psychiatric patients and coaching clients for several years with really great results. I know you're going to love it, so go on in, check it out. Download your free copy of the Creative 8 audiobook today at welcometohumanity.net/creative. Now, let's get back to that conversation with Kurt Krueger.
All right. Well, you're off and running, Kurt. Tell us a little bit about who you really are. It's a human among humans. It's your game. Like, roll on, sir. Pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you.
I'm a little crazy, man, because my birth itself was unique because I'm an identical twin. And I got to be raised with this part of me that he and I had a lot of competition. We got into combatives, and we had our stuff. I was raised in the city of San Fernando with Locos, which means the crazy ones, because I was pretty crazy myself. I went to a school and I was a 3-sport letterman and got a scholarship to University of Colorado, and I had become an All-American before that.
And what was that sport? What was that in?
In swimming. My twin was a 3-time national champion when I was only an All-American. That may sound sort of crazy, but when you're competing against your brother, that's an only.
No, that's not a brother. That's an identical twin. We have brothers. We don't have identical twins. So let's make that distinction very clear.
Yeah, it's very unique because this one entity became supposedly two. And I happen to have a selfie with Bernie, and my twin loves the president that we have now. We have interesting discussions and I have a dear friend who I want to get to be sort of a intermediary, so he points out the times when we're coming from our competitive stuff instead of trying to find that common ground of the two sides of the coin. Because in effect, we are one coin with two sides. It's the yin and the yang. And this is what I found in my first teacher in yoga was a guy named Yogi Bhajan in 1970. Then I got my guru, who was Swami Muktananda, And he got me off a hijacked airplane once. And
okay, well, we don't want to overwhelm my listeners right so quick. We don't want them to go, holy cow, like, well, I'm out of here. And so let's slow down some of those. Bajan and Mutaknanda and a hijacked airplane and an identical twin and an all-time swimmer and simply an All-American, darn it, not a three-time national champion. Let's just cut right to the chase here, Kurt. Like, seriously, man.
Excellent.
Let's slow this down so our listeners, or speed it up. Do whatever you need to do here so that we can get literally what you are and what you're about, because we don't have time for anything else right now, Kurt Krueger. Who are you?
Perfect. I'm a person who wants to be able to stop the separation demon. I'm all about, instead of wanting to, I am. The separation demon, like I mentioned about this man and woman kind of thing, and I'm human and so on. This is a key thing in what is causing distress in the world. Another key thing is something that is the imbalance of all this negativity that flies around. And the key factor is when we focus on what we want, we're more likely going to get it. But everybody's focusing on this side and that side, the good, the bad, the Republicans, the Democrats, the fascists, all of this. When we are one humanity, we are one planet, and we have the ability to work together. Just like my brother and I used to work together with Swim with Mike, which is a nonprofit organization that, for physically challenged athletes and so on. We get to be together, and this is one of the things that's happening in the world now. I have 6 people living in my house. One of them is 80. I'm only 74. Another 2 of them are about 64. And then we have a 31 and a 26-year-old. And we're living and having beautiful family meals. We're eating incredible food. We're taking walks. Our dialogues and around the dinner table last up to 2 hours or so. And this is with all of us, not just these old folk, so to speak, and I don't feel myself as old anyway. I feel like I'm 36.
Not everybody's going to be listening to this broadcast within the next few days, and it'll be a little bit before it's posted anyways, which in these days, even if it's a week or two from now before this is posted, things are likely to have changed drastically in who we are in our external world and our circumstances. So let's give a little backdrop to where we are with that. We are presently on safe-at-home quarantine for the most part, and not even for the most part. It's considered irresponsible should you do anything different than that. We still can go to the stores and we can have food delivered, and we still can absolutely be with our families and our friends and ourselves as we take on an entirely different pace of what it means to be human in this also crazy and completely perfect world that we live in. So as we sit here right now, it's still in process, and we don't know when this thing or if this thing is ever going to end, this thing being the coronavirus terror and restrictions associated with it that are mostly governmental induced at this point. And also who we then get to be personally when we go through these changes is, I think that gives a little bit of a backdrop of where the flow is with respect to the transformation that we're naturally being called through right now. Is that fair to say? Are you in line with that?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. All right, good. Because then we're going back. One thing Kurt, the fact that I have another friend who's a twin, and I spoke with him just 3 days ago, and he lives in Atlanta, and he's an identical twin, and I know both brothers, and he's just remarkable. He's so completely remarkable. And in this time, I really get I work with him. He's a recruiting friend of mine, and I love this man deeply. His name is Alex. And so, Alex, if you're listening, hello. It's so great that you heard me talk about you right now. This thing you referenced about, no, look, we are all twins. We all grew up in the same womb. Hey.
Called Mother Earth.
You're called Mother Earth. Exactly.
Yep.
You are just a 1 in whatever the percentage is there, not very high, example of 1 in some 100,000 who turn out to be identical twins. You are like special privy to what it means to be born in the same earth and then work together. Can you speak to that?
Wow, that's really good, because we work together in the family in little San Fernando. This is the oldest town in the San Fernando Valley in North Los Angeles area. And we had friends of all races, creeds, colors, everything, because we're human beings. And it was interesting because I don't believe that young people see those differences. They're pointed it out through the media, and everybody starts copying into this, what I've mentioned about the separation demon. It's them. They're different. Like this is a Chinese virus rather than the coronavirus. So we separate people rather than deal with issues. And there's people of all races, creeds, or colors that you can love tremendously. And the same thing goes with you could also dislike them because of how they treat people and so on and so forth.
Yes. So you're saying that the distinctions, this idea that there might even be differences between us, or the whole notion that there are different kinds of people than other kinds of people, are fabrications of conversation primarily, that they're really just made up and then bought into by some large group of prevailing conversationalists that then choose to agree with that. Yes?
Yeah, that's what I would say. It's putting borders between us. It's like the borders in the world. There's no borders. I have never seen a real border.
Right.
Mother Earth does not have any of this separation demon happening. It's all one growing live force. And when we focus on the positive aspects of life and how these are my brothers and sisters all over the world. When I lived in India, in the villages in India, it was magnificent. You saw more kids having fun in those little villages than you would walk in the streets of Los Angeles.
Oh, for sure.
Right? And it's a really interesting experience for a person who's been raised in a major city in the world.
Right. We got the idea that in order to have fun, you have to have certain conditions and qualifications that us comfortable ones, supposedly comfortable, have, that those underprivileged ones are never going to, unfortunately, be able to experience. And when you land there and realize that they actually got the edge, it can be a cluster. It can be a deep cluster.
Totally.
So tell us a little bit about what India meant to you. Take a few minutes to tell us a little bit about Rajan and Mutaknanda, because you can't just throw those names out. And I know you were actually deeply close with both of those characters. And I think my audience is going to be very curious about that stage of your development.
Well, Yogi Bhajan was my first yoga teacher, and we used to have to move away the furniture to do the yoga postures in his furniture store on Melrose and Robertson or so in Hollywood. And he was a good yoga teacher, but he wasn't a master for me. He tried to force the Kundalini awake by having you do, let's say, the boat pose, which is a pose where your feet and torso are off the ground, and the only thing on the ground is your buttocks, or coccyx, actually, which is your tailbone. And we had to do, in the very first class I ever took, 15 minutes of this. Whereas Muktananda was a person who could awaken your Kundalini, who had that, they call it Shakti in Sanskrit, this meditative force. He was like a blowtorch to be able to light you up. And when you got lit up, I saw people bouncing like frogs and sitting like yogis, and the person doing an incredible posture called the peacock pose, who had never ever taken yoga before. And she was a, quote, fat old lady. That was a description that I used to have, and so on. But it is a description of a person who had never taken yoga, and she got into this pose because that pose works at your digestive system, and that's what she needed. And that's, the yogis knew that because they were in such a deep state. So when you meet a master, they are at the level of that. Like, he allowed me to get into the deepest state of meditation on this hijacked airplane that the Japanese Red Army took over. And I got off first. And thank you, God. I'm very happy. And this traumatic experience, it started out very traumatic because I felt like I had my heart in my throat, ended up being what this Vedic astrologer said. It was a traumatic experience that turned out good for me. It allowed me to be able to speak at the United Nations, at Oxford Medical School on stress management, and give programs for corporations and so on and so forth. So we can turn something that's bad into something that's good.
Like a crucible moment, I think some would call it, like a moment in time where your world paradigmatically shifts instantly. And even though at the moment you might think that that was one great trauma, like extraordinary, life changing, perhaps scary if you look at it from the outside, and you start realizing that it really is a life defining moment that leads you to be able to be a massive contribution on the other side, having gone through that, not only survived, but actually grown from it. It's really beautiful. I have a couple car accidents in my life, and both of them, not for the time for this call, but both of them are just insane. Both of them are just death defying beyond belief. There's no reason in the world that I walk away from either of those. No way. And what I have about those is everything that was associated with both of those. I think I've told you about either one or both of them. And there's something like who I've become as a result of walking through those two events is a man who has been affected by those two events. And then I get to bring what's on the other side of those things that were just hair raising, on instant. I actually, as I was going through them, they were not hair raising. They were just now. But afterwards, they become hair raising. It's like, well, I might as well make them hair raising. If I'm going to tell a story, it's going to shock the world around me. I might as well give it a little bit of hair raising edge. But while it was going on, it was simply what was going on, right? I mean, that's it. It's just what was going on. Just what's next to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying. Let me ask you a little bit about this Mutaknana thing. I think there's something very curious here. So, and not to compare the two, but I think it's almost in your own personal growth and development. Can you do a pull-up is different than having reorganizing the way I see the world such that what now becomes available for me is 25 pull-ups, is a different thing. It's a different thing to set the conditions such that what I know I can't do now not only can be done, but becomes a natural self-expression of the conditions shifting in front of me to allow for something new to happen. And it sounds like a little bit like Mutaknanda was that for you, your study. Yeah, tell me more.
And you mentioned about this sort of big change. The only picture in my book shows a picture of a man lifting over 7,000 pounds with one arm off a standard. It was up on a standard, so he just had to lift it off the supports. And he did that 3 out of 5 times. He was over 60 years old, and he used to teach meditation. His name is Sri Chinmoy. And the idea that you have any limitations is all a mental construct. It's like I got into a car accident with my twin. My twin was driving back from a swim workout. We just started working out with world record holders in a big club, and we had been from San Fernando Park Pool. And we're on the freeway, and we started to skid because it was really raining. And we went from the fast lane to the guardrail, totaled the car, had all this traffic as we're spinning. And I'm saying some unkind words to my brother. And the tow truck man, when he finally got there, said, "Can you guys pick up the car?" I said, "Sure." And I looked over to my brother, and he's in a state of shock. His mouth is open, and he's staring. And so I picked up the car. The guy put the tires underneath it and towed us away. And I had just come from a swim workout. I was 6 foot, 150 pounds, and I was 17 and a half years old.
I'm sorry. I'm think my listeners might have missed what you just said. Can you repeat that one for me? What did you do? What did you do?
I picked up the car, the back of the car. It was a 1960 Studebaker Lark. It was a small car in those days. But I picked up the back, and he put the tires underneath, and we got in the truck and drove away. I had no problem doing it.
You were a human jack. You were a human jack for these guys.
Correct.
I got it.
And my brother was just standing there. Now, how did this little skinny 6 foot, 150 pound swimmer who had never really worked out on weights at all, although I'd been a varsity football player the year before, how could I do that? It's impossible physiologically, but it is not impossible when you get into the zone. And this is what I've been doing, teaching people on peak performance practices. And meditation is the most powerful practice. And sit a meditation will knock your socks off.
All right. Well, that's great. You've left us really seriously, totally curious. Like my listeners are, come on, Dr. Fred, ask him a little more about that. So, because we really want to know what the hell he's talking about. So can you translate this for the next one, just the next round for us, to us heathens out here who don't know how to lift up cars?
Well, that's the thing is that we are human. We are actually a spiritual being having a physical
Yes, exactly.
experience. Okay? People have heard this kind of a thing. But when you tap into that zone, when you experiment, when you give it a go, there's just about nothing you cannot do. I'll give you another example if you want. I'm down in South Africa playing beach ball. A guy spikes the ball, beautiful spike. He comes down, he had blown his knee out. You heard this horrible pop. And I drag him off the court because that's what you do in beach ball, let people play and see what you can do for the guy. I ask him if it's okay if I see if I can help him. He says, okay. I put my hands on his knee very, very gently, and I guide him through a visualization practice, which is the most common sports psychology practice to calm somebody down and get the breathing and so on and so forth, and release the stress a lot. And for the first time in my life, I thanked God periodically during this 45 minutes. I thanked God for having healed him, just like this guy named Jesus and other people in the history of the world have done. And they just gave it a go, I think. Well, Jesus, I guess, supposedly knew who he was. And that's what I'm about, is trying to find out who the hell I am. So 45 minutes after I did that, he gets up and walks away. I never even learned the guy's name. Years later, I'm on a backpacking trip with a bunch of scouts, and the guy hobbles up when we compacted the line. He hobbles up with the staff because he had twisted his ankle very severely. I asked him the same thing, did the same thing, he walked away. If I can do that, this little boy from San Fernando, if I can do that just by trying to do it, just by opening up to the opportunity that it could happen, and this is just opening up to what people call the grace or whatever, it happened. So what can't you do?
Yeah. So listen, I have a question about what you're saying, which is about this word called try. I really am curious about, in fact, were you trying to do anything? Or maybe what you were really trying to do was stop trying to think that you can't do it, or something like that. Like,
well, that's the word. I don't like the word try, and it's a well-conditioned animal like me hasn't gotten that out of my language yet.
yeah,
What it is I opened to the opportunity for it.
exactly.
I just gave it a go, as they say in Australia. And if you give it a go, if you put yourself out on the diving platform that's 10 meters up, that's 30 feet down, and it looks like it's 100 yards down.
I know, right?
You can either jump or you can turn around and go down the ladder. And when you jump, you freed yourself of the fear. It's like when my boys did the bungee jump off of Soweto Towers in South Africa. Yeah, that's a scary sucker. When you give it a go, it's a life-transforming experience.
For sure.
I don't stress people doing extreme sports or other kinds of things. You don't need to do that. What you can do is open yourself up to the force that's in everybody. They call it the inner self. They call it the soul. They call it the spirit. They call it God. There's all kinds of names for it. But when you open up to that force, we just about, I believe, there's nothing we cannot do.
Isn't that just great?
So when we have this time in our hands with this coronavirus or any other time on our hands, we can just use that little bit of time or a lot of time like we have now to do more meditation, more prayer, more talking about the real essential life thriving ideas instead of talking about what we can't do and what I wish I could and all that kind of crazy.
Yeah, so we got the life thriving ideas that we could be communicating with each other about. We have prayer, we have meditation, and we now have what we think is a little bit the odd illusion that we have more time on our hands. This most fascinating illusion.
Isn't that interesting?
It's so interesting, and
yeah.
As a result of having. It's really, isn't it interesting? We could go deep into that and get how perfectly illusory that whole thing is. It's like completely made up, like every piece of having more time.
It's like the money idea.
It is like money, isn't it?
The same thing. We believe that some people believe it's so important that they'll get people to go back to work and maybe cost people lives.
Right. It's fascinating.
And that's more important than the people who are their brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, or whatever.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and you end up taking some sort of side, as some sort of something that you believe about something, and that ends up being what it is that you believe. And so,
Well, we focus on defense. What we focus on is what we get.
right,
We have a Department of Defense, trillions of dollars for that.
right.
And the rest of the economy or the other departments of the government get the rest of it. But half of it is for the Department of Defense. Well, then we have to defend ourselves, or what are these guys going to do? They have no reason to be in existence.
Right.
Barbara Marx Hubbard said, let's have a Department of Peace. You create a Department of Peace, and you focus on getting peace instead of trying to be able to, quote, prevent war.
Interesting.
You're not focusing on prevention. It's like Mother Teresa would not go to an anti-war rally. She'd go to a
Peace rally. Yes.
We want to be able to go focus on that. Focus on light. Focus on the light force rather than the dark force.
Yes.
And all society and TV programs just about focus on the dark force.
Isn't that interesting? So a couple of my more recent interviews talking about this light and dark force duality and interface. I'd like to ask you a thing. I think I know where you would likely go, but I cannot wait for you to put this into words for my listeners, is this idea of the light and dark force. What I hear you say is to focus on the light rather than the dark. But one thing I know about you, Kurt, is acknowledging the dark is what allows for the fullness of humanity. Am I right about that? How can we embrace the dark? Like, this is not about This is not about focusing on the light. You go ahead.
Put it in
Talk
front
to
of
me.
you.
Yes, Jung.
Jung said that the ego, the so-called the dark force of some people, you want to have it in front of you so it isn't behind you where it has all its power.
Yes.
And that's a paraphrasing.
Yeah, so go ahead and put the dark force, this thing that we're terrified of, or that we think we're terrified of, or we don't want to look at, or we think we can't look at, or the thing that is unspeakable because we said we can't speak about it, like put that thing in front of us. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but also because it's in front of you, you can control it more. Because you
more access.
It's more available, and it's the two sides of the coin. It's the Tao. It's the yin and the yang. So when we accept the wholeness of ourselves, like I accept my brother fully. I love my brother. I love Trump. I disagree with some of the things my brother does, just like I disagree with some of the things our president says. I disagree with a lot of what Pelosi says and does and so on. I'm not a politician. I'm a person that's Beatitudes or the golden rule is the only rule we need to have. We don't need to have any other. I don't like the idea of people who have the gold rule. I like the idea of the people treating each other with respect and love. See God in each other, know that God dwells within you as you. That was the teachings that Muktananda set forth. And when you see God in each other, you're in heaven. But if you don't see God in yourself, you're not quite in heaven. You're seeing a lot of heaven around you, but you could be in hell yourself.
Right. I'm going to share that sometime this week, and I suspect we're not done with episodes like this, but sometime this week, the ground broke out underneath me. My own virtual psychic ground broke free, and I tumbled through the floorboards into wherever I was going to land next. It's highly uncomfortable.
Well, I wish you'd allow us to have time to speak about that.
Yeah.
Because that is so important.
It is. And that's why I'm bringing it forth.
Yeah.
As I now walk stronger than ever, as I now speak more present than ever, literally right now, today, Kurt, like this second.
I understand. I feel it.
I owe it to this experience of the floor breaking out and a choice for resilience.
Whoa.
A choice for resilience at that moment.
Yeah.
I think. So my guess is, I don't have to be right about this, but we're talking about, let's say roughly 350 million Americans, or let's say somewhere around, I don't know, 2 or 3 or 4 billion people worldwide, some number like this, who have had their life altered by orders by orders from whatever these higher people are over the last few weeks. Many of who are still living in that altered world. And we can choose to have multiple different ways of looking at these so-called profoundly altered experiences. And some of them, legitimate as they are thoroughly and totally disempowering. And others of them
only when you
accept them as such, right?
Correct. So it's like something is either happening to you or for you. The for you is the important thing. What the Swedes did after the Spanish flu, 1918 flu, right? The Swedes got, and Norwegians got freedom for their country from the monarchies and set up basically a democratic socialist country. And look at how they've been thriving ever since.
No kidding. They really have. I heard some recent news this week about them, and it's just so true.
I taught at Stockholm University. I live there, and I'm actually part Swede. I'm a quarter Swede.
Good plug.
And when we take the best, like Michael Moore had a movie called Where to Invade Next. Take the best of all the different countries and incorporate it into America, or let's do it for the whole frickin' world. Why just America? Why not take the optimum for happiness? Like Bhutan is all focused on happiness. Now New Zealand is getting to be able to have gross national happiness instead of gross national product. Focus on that, on what we want. When we focus on what we want, we get it.
Isn't that great?
We got off to the moon, we got the Peace Corps, and then it got changed to be able to be run by the politicians. And that's one of the things that we got to get away from it. And the biggest key factor in getting away from politicians of the kind we know now for so many of them is to be able to get people to have what's called character development. The Living Values Education Program has over 90% reduction in violence at a refugee camp within 2 years of its implementation.
Talk to me and talk to us a little bit. You hopped right in. I love it. And now give us a little bit of a context for what this organization is and what it means to you.
God, I know of another number of other character development programs, but this one is by far the best because it's more holistic. It brings in all the aspects of living, people's expertise and bent in. Some are artists and some are, mathematicians and so on and so forth. Everybody's right or left brain, and some people combine both. So this brings in all the levels of our learning, and the first two values that they start with are the two most valuable ones to do: love and peace. All the other values or virtues come from those two. When you get people to see that those are the key factors in a joyous life, and that's beyond happiness, and then you can get into a blissful life, but that's another story. We can get there at another time. We will have a totally different society. And it's not that she has books on different age levels that can be incorporated into education. She has a parenting book called, listen to this, Nurturing with Love and Wisdom, Disciplining with Peace and Respect.
Oh, wow. So that's the title of the book?
That's the title of the book, and it's by Diane Tillman.
My goodness.
Listen, I would love to be able to have you attached to your podcast somehow, if you can, or whatever, some handouts on either peak performance practices or meditation, or this information about, character inclusion is what I call it, but it also has a description about how effective it is at getting people to learn better and easier and more fun.
Yes.
Finland has more free time and playtime in schools by far. They don't give homework, and yet they have the highest scores in the world on all the major tests that they give people in school.
So, yes. And by the way, yeah, for sure, the handouts will be associated and be easily reachable. Who's ever editing this at the end will take care of that. And we'll make sure we put a tap button in that gets you access to those documents or to learn more about those things. And, or those organization or those opportunities that show me that's calling them things is dearly disrespectful. So please excuse me. It's like for the items that you're speaking of that have propensity, a possibility of literally transforming the world perceives itself, how the world perceives itself and then performs. There's something about, I want to ask you this. Let's see if I can get this question out.
Yep.
That so much of who you've been, maybe beginning, of course, at least in this lifetime, with the interface of your brother 9 months before any of us knew that there was a such thing as another person in the world. There you were dealing with another person.
Yeah,
and
kicking him in the side and elbowing him. My mother must have had hell.
So you got that head start. And then Kurt, it sounds like most of what your work has been is kind of altering the way the natural progression of reality was either fed to you or considered to be default or thought to be the way things were, and that there was an access for you instantaneously without effort to explore other ways to perceive one's reality, either on the micro, macro, cosmic level, and really be a different, a stand for a completely transformed way of being in multiple different areas of life as you've gone through life.
Yeah, I've been blessed because when I was young, I always wanted to experience God. I didn't want to pray to the dude.
No.
I didn't want to be able to kowtow to him and so on.
No, that wouldn't be you.
I wanted to have an experience. As a Muslim, I'm a Sufi. As a Buddhist, I'm a Siddhartha. And so on.
As
and
a
so
Jew,
forth.
you'd be called a tzaddik, by the way. Tzaddik.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, this is a differentiation. And some people, if I said I'm a Sufi, would say, well, what the hell is that? Others would say, oh, you're one of those.
Exactly.
And again, there's the separation. But as a person, when we get to be together, and you and I have been able to be together very easily, and it's all because that heart is open with you, and you actually have a knack to be able to communicate and sort of bring things into alignment very easily.
Thank you.
And it's an art. And Greg Braden does that. His good buddy, he's from Stanford University, cellular biologist. His name escapes me. It doesn't matter. But we get to be able to explore the fullness of life, not just as a scientist, not just as a person who was into social studies and psychology and this, that, or the other thing, but as a total human being.
Yeah, as an experiencing total human being, like taking on the dark side as well as the light side, realizing something, at least on occasion, about the impermanence of things, and realizing something, at least on occasion, about the possibility that everything we think isn't so. Like really getting some core of the possibility that this pain that you're having right now is not only required, it's like exquisite, and you'll get that later. Like really getting all of that and walking through life is sort of what the Welcome to Humanity brand, or the Welcome to Humanity statement, where it comes from. And why now it's like I no longer have any claim to the brand, although I guess it really is associated with me. There's something like, folks, as always has been, as always will be, welcome to humanity.
Yes. It's like welcoming your neighbor.
Yes.
We bring cookies, fresh baked cookies to our neighbors when they first move in. We just bring cookies to our neighbors because of this incident here, and we call our neighbors to be able to make sure they're okay because there's one guy living next to us that's a solo guy, and so on and so forth. This is our tribe. This is our team. There's a great book by Sebastian Junger called Tribe, and I would highly recommend that. But we have that opportunity. It's not but, it's and.
Yes,
we get to be able to have this opportunity to grow together as one. Because as Bruce Lipton was a cellular biologist, he said,
yeah, that's right. I knew you. I was thinking. I was like, man, I got his name. So thank you.
and he said that healthy cells in the human body, if there's one that isn't healthy around them, what do? And some people who have the world as they see it, they think, they kill it. or they, whatever. But a healthy cell helps an unhealthy cell around it. The
That's
only
amazing.
cell in the human body, the only cell in the human body that doesn't do that, everybody fears. This cancer. So we can learn from our body, and God, we can learn from our Mother Earth too. There's a great book called Braiding Sweetgrass by an indigenous who is also an incredible biologist who reconstructs horrible sites that have been polluted by the big oil or whatever by all the natural means that Mother Earth has given us, but she can accelerate it because she knows those things that they got.
Isn't that great?
Like
Oh
on
my
our
God.
property. We just did regenerative agriculture, regenerative gardening.
It's awesome.
We're going to be able to have less fire on our property. We're going to be able to have things pull down carbons just by doing some simple things.
Isn't that great? Oh my God.
Yeah.
I know. It's like, it's from that tumble, from the, I guess they would say, from at least my last tumble through the floorboards, there's something when I make that decision, when I make that choice for resilience, or a choice that I get to later call resilience anyways, to step up to me, there is a new awareness arising, and that is seemingly, to call it new isn't really fair. It's an unveiling of an awareness that was pre-existent and covered over about everything that you're saying, specifically in the realm of gardening or nature or what's really possible or humanity or love and peace or duality or light and dark or taking on the world with helping those in need and all the many other things that somehow you flipped into this 43-minute and 56-second conversation already that just are a complete turn on. So I want you to get that. And I mean that at the very highest level, of course. I suppose we've reached a time where turn on, the more Timothy Leary turn on than,
I like
some
the
porn.
Ram Dass turn on.
Yeah, exactly. The Ram Dass turn on. Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
And there's just something here to be had in this moment that I become really grateful for having made my choice last week. Because had I not made that choice, I would not know this. I would have forgotten this. I would have bought what isn't this.
Yeah.
And that's what's so fascinating about this thing. It's like, thank you for giving me the opportunity for that choice. I stared it down and here I am. And the moments like that create, transformed, expansive, seemingly at least relatively expansive reality parameters. Like what's available is everything. That's what's available. Everything.
Everything is available. And when you get into a deep, deep, deep state of meditation, there's nothing that's not available. And
so go ahead. I'm going to touch that, but go ahead. Please go take that one more level in.
One of the things is that when you come out of that state, you see that there is only real oneness. There's nothing that is not you, so to speak. And the three qualities that most of the major religions give of God is he's omnipresent, all-powerful, and all-knowing. And it's a bad term saying he, but if God is omnipresent, then there's nothing that you see that is not God. And when you treat that
exactly
as God, like a homeless person, I give something to a homeless person every time I see him. And it may not be a lot, but I'm giving something, and I always say a little prayer. And I got a beautiful teaching, the Gentle Art of Blessing by Pierre Pradervan. It's a magical book. I'm blessing people, and they actually get more than you think when you just have a simple inward blessing of that person. We have more force than we think we have.
Yeah.
We've been belittled too often and categorized as, oh, you're in the upper part of the class, or
Exactly.
you're in the
Yeah,
lower
yeah,
part of the class, or you're middle class, or whatever the hell that you're in a classroom or in the society.
Yeah.
And that's a bunch of bullshit.
It is a bunch of
I've been
bullshit.
thinking about doing a podcast just with, quote, common people and talking with them about these more deep subjects, because there's so many people out there that have so much wisdom.
Yeah.
And when we allow people to see that, they can say, hey, yeah, I think about things too. And maybe I can think about that instead of all the crappy things I got to think about with this, that, or the other thing happening.
Yeah, so I'm going to bring up two more topics, and then I think we're going to have to close. But I hope my listeners can see, and you and I definitely see again, that we could literally be talking for the next 8 hours, and it's only until we decided that it might be time to sleep. And then when we woke up, we would begin and say something we haven't said and continue to explore all of this beauty, holding each other up to be accountable for being able to do that. So I love you for that. I thank you for being on. I wanted to bring something else to your attention. There you go. First of all, let's get that to you.
Okay.
Yeah. And next is, you've spoken about 3 or 4 times on this talk about the power of meditation. And it seems like it's the winner, like of all the things out here that give access, of all the things, the magic that you've done in your life, of all the things that appear to be at least a little bit of a plug for that you are. I'm hearing meditation as the one that wins in this conversation. Can you give my listeners, maybe some of them who have not actually ever meditated or have some sort of weird notion that meditation's for the weirdos, or meditation is only for those who can get over their anxiety first, or all those things. Can you maybe synopsize how all of us can access something called meditation and have, we see you study with Mukhananda. There's no way when you say deep meditation, we all know that we're not going where you go. So what I'm suggesting is, can you translate that? What I'm inviting you to do is translate that for my listeners so that they can hear what meditation is, even for those who haven't studied in India.
Okay. I'm going to give a couple of things. Number one is that the depth of meditation that each person does when they do it is perfect. As you do it more and more, and you become more regular and maybe even longer time periods of sitting or whatever, or walking meditation or driving meditation. I teach a bunch of different forms of meditation, and it's all dealing with your psychosomatic spiritual experience. The easiest one for people to do is something that a kindergarten teacher who I taught the peak performance for academics and sports workshop to. It was a human development thing for LUSD. She came back and called it the roller coaster fingers. So if you were to take your left hand facing you, just hold it up in front of your face, take your right forefinger at the base of the little baby finger, and as you breathe in, go up the little finger, and we're going to go up to the top, and as you breathe out, you go down. You're going to go across the fingers. As you breathe in, you go up. As you breathe out, you go down. We're going to go across those fingers, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. At your own rate, not at my rate. Go across the thumb, and then we're going to go back again. This time we're going to add paying attention to the space between the breath. When we breathe in, and just before we breathe out, there's a space, a pause in the breath. As we breathe out and breathe in, there's a space. And we pay attention to that pause, that pause of the brainwave activity. And we go back across the fingers, breathing in and breathing out. We do it a few times, and by the time you get 5 rounds of these fingers, your mind is calmer because your breathing calms down, and because you're paying attention to the space between the breath, that helps. But I'm going to add a cue word. In psychology, they call it a cue word. In Asia, they call it a mantra. You breathe in, hum as you breathe in, and so as you breathe out. Hum means I am, so means that. The little ego, the big ego. And I'm saying the pure ego. As you breathe in, hum. As you breathe out, so. And you go back across the fingers for a total of 5 times. And you will feel so calmer.
Beautiful.
You will be able to do this because it's a psychosomatic spiritual practice. You've got this idea of I am and that. That is everything else. The little ego, the big, and so on. The little self, the big self, the cosmos.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure. It's in my book, Winning Ways for Living, and there's a number of other practices there, but the important thing is you don't need anything more than that, especially those 2 simple teachings about seeing God in each other and knowing that God dwells within you as you.
Well, Kurt, that's a great place, I think, to taper off of our conversation. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I so appreciate being with you.
There really is a lot more questions, and I'm sure we could generate. And I think this is a sweet space to
We got the same alert, huh?
Yeah. So, Safer at Home, the City of Los Angeles Safer at Home order remains in place for LA residents and businesses. We need your help to keep everyone safe and slow the spread of COVID-19. Essential activities like getting groceries and medications may continue. More information and resources to help you can be found at coronavirus.lacity.org. Stay home, stay safe. Type public safety alert. Wow.
Yeah.
6:00.
So the times we live in can be totally changed when we use these times for change.
Folks, I hope you've enjoyed as much as I did, or even just a quarter as much as I did, being with Kurt Krueger today. The world continues to be as spectacular as it's always been. And today we were able to take a little peek at what humanity can do to both appreciate that and contribute to it. It's been an honor to be with you, Kurt. Before we go, can you let my listeners know how they might get in touch with you? You've mentioned a couple times, but really out loud, what might someone do if they want to follow you or talk to you or see what you're up to? How would they get in touch with you?
Fastest way is the W's, Success Systems International.
Thank you.
.net. Success Systems International.net. All one word.
Awesome.
And then .net. And with the W's in front of it. And you can get the book and use that. The important thing is staying peaceful within yourself. When you get out of line, bring yourself back into line.
Thank you.
Because your being is totally in control.
Thank you.
Thank you. I love you, mate.
I love you too, mate. Thank you. We're signing off. This is Welcome to Humanity. This is Dr. Fred. You've been with me and Kurt Krueger during this hour. It's been a deep pleasure. Come on back for the next one. And yeah, just bring the whole life forward. Welcome to humanity, everyone. I love you. Bye for now.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. You know, I really, really appreciate who Kurt is as a person. This is a man who's been so into, self-advancement, correction of path, teaching, and just being an example of an extraordinary human. It's really great to be his friend, and it was super great to share him with you today. Perhaps as you were listening, you might have thought, wow, I know someone who would really love to hear that interview. Why not reach out to them right now and invite them to listen and to subscribe to the Welcome to Humanity podcast? I'd even like to ask you a favor that is small in effort and big, like really huge in terms of the impact to both me and my listeners. Could you take a moment to hit the subscribe button on your podcast player? That way you'll get the latest episodes as they become available. And if you appreciate what we do here, just take 5 minutes to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It turns out that subscribes and reviews are the 2 major ways we can reach more listeners with the Welcome to Humanity podcast. If these conversations are altering your life in any way to the good, well, pay it forward by subscribing and leaving a review. Both me and my listeners would be truly grateful for your support. To catch up with past episodes, just head on over to welcometohumanity.net/podcast. And until next time, this is Dr. Fred, and this has been another Welcome to Humanity podcast. It's been great to have you. I love you. Take care. Have a beautiful day. Bye for now.